Alright, hello YouTubers, this is Road Trek Ralph again. And today we're going to be talking about vintage air versus classic auto air. I'm also going to touch base a little bit with Restomod air, and I believe it was old products. Old air products is the other one. So there's pretty much, there's a lot of companies on the market, but there's 4 of them that I know of. Classic air, vintage air, the new kids on the block, which is Restomod air, and old air products. So today, so I bought this kit here, this classic auto air kit for my 1967 Camaro. I'm not working on this guy right now. I'm working on this one. So anyway, just want to get one thing out of the way real quick. When you hear that phrase, layman's term, that's me. All right. When you hear that phrase, common folk, that's me. That's Road Trek Ralph. You hear that phrase, everyday average Joe? Again, that's me, all right? Everything I buy, I have to save up for. All right, this stuff doesn't just come cheap, and it's not free. So, your average everyday Joe, you know, I'm not. This is not This is not RMD Garage. This is not Graveyard Cars. This is not Bitchin' Rides. This is, you know, this is not that Texas show that comes out with those big, beautiful trucks. This is not $1 million shop, okay? This is not $1 million shop. Let me just do a real quick once over. All right? This is not $1 million shop. This is my garage, folks. There you go, IJC proud. All right, so this is not something, you know, if that's what you're looking for, this is not it. This is for the average, everyday guy. All right, so let's get back to the focus. The focus is on vintage air, which is this here. I got some leftover stuff from a vintage air install I did. I've done a couple of these on some of my other vehicles in the past. Vehicles I've already sold. So this is the leftover vintage air. We're gonna get with that. And then this is a new. I took this out of the box. This is a classic auto air. So that's a classic auto air controller. So we're gonna get with that. So like again, at the end of the video, I'll talk a little bit about Restomod and old air products. The first thing I want to say is, don't buy from, if you're gonna put an aftermarket air conditioning kit in a classic car, a hot rod, or a vehicle that didn't come equipped with air conditioning. If you're gonna go with one of these aftermarket kits, don't buy because the company's in your city. That's the wrong reason to buy. You know, especially if it's something you got to save up for. For example, Vintage Air is in my city. They're located in San Antonio. This video is being recorded in San Antonio. But I didn't buy from Vintage Air, and I'm going to go over the reasons why. Again, just because they're located here doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a great deal. If I drive up to Vintage Air, they're not going to give me a discount because I live in San Antonio. They're not going to give me a discount because, hey, Road Trek Ralph, let's give you a discount. It doesn't work that way. Okay? They may as well just been on Mars, because anything I ever got out of Vintage Air was nothing but out of, I could have just made a phone call, you know, for customer service. I could have just done it over the phone, customer service. So, which is one of the reasons why I went with classic auto air. But again, we're going to cover the pros and cons. And I hope if you are on the fence about what system you want to get for your ride, I hope this video will serve as a, you know, maybe lean you toward the right direction, or give you some advice. So, all right, let's see here. Pros and cons. We're gonna get rid of the pros and cons. The first pro, Vintage Air is a plug-and-play system, meaning once you open your box, once you get all the parts out, and you put it all together, you're good to go. You're driving down the street. After you, of course, you do your vacuum, you're free on charge, you're good to go. Now, the only caveat to that is if it came with one of these units, one of these electric controllers. If it comes with this, which a 1967 Camaro through 1969 Camaro, it's going to come with these. Okay, this first generation Camaro, it's going to come with this. What this does from Vintage Air is it allows you to use your factory controls. You got to do a little extra work, and you know, you could use your factory controls. All right, but for a pro, that's the one pro that Vintage Air again gets is that it's all plug and play. With Classic Auto Air, you have to bench test the whole thing before you even begin. And to me, I think the factory should do that. I don't want to open this box, have to set everything up on my bench, my workbench, and then have to test it all. That should have already been done. This thing should be ready to go outside the box, but it's not. Vintage Air is. Again, with the caveat, if you get this style with the kit. All right, so that's the only pro that I'm going to give Vintage Air. We're going to give a bunch of pros to Classic Auto Air, and the rest of these are going to be the cons for Vintage Air. So again, going to this controller with the 1967, with the first generation Camaro, you're going to get this free of charge from Classic Auto Air. When I say free of charge, I mean it comes with a kit. Okay. With Vintage Air, you get this thing. Now, just by looking at the bag, looking at everything that it comes with, I don't even want to open that thing. That's why I didn't open it. That's why when I installed this particular kit in another Camaro, I had to pay extra, and I bought a different controller. I bought a different controller because I did not want to reuse my old dingy, my old rusty, squeaky control panel. With Classic Auto Air, you don't have to worry about that. It comes with a new one. I mean, you're putting the vintage. We're not going for points here, folks. You know, we're not trying to. This isn't Pebble Beach. This is the Tour de Elegance of Pebble Beach, where you know everything has to be perfect and original. No, negative. This it doesn't have to be that. You know, this will make me happy. This is all I need. Okay, so let's go to number 2. Larger evaporator and condenser. Okay, now it's all inside the box. I opened the box, took the controller out, but I haven't taken out the evaporator yet, or the evaporator housing, that big part that goes under the dash. I haven't taken that out yet, but from what I've read online, it's larger than what Vintage Air offers. The evaporator coils are larger, the heater coils are larger, and the condenser, which sits in the front of the vehicle, is larger. So common sense would tell me that if it's larger, it's going to get colder. Okay, and again, that's larger in the Classic Air versus the Vintage Air. And I kind of believe it because the casing, again, I haven't taken this one out of the box, but the casings I've seen online are huge. But anyway, that's I'd rather have it be huge than it be slim. You know, I don't mind if it's sitting down there and you can see it. I'm not all about the aesthetics. I want performance over aesthetics. Okay. Another pro for Classic Auto Air: the hoses and lines are easy accessible. They're not hidden behind the fender. Okay, here's the fender right here. So with the Vintage Air kit, with the new Vintage Air kit, it's going to come with lines that you have to install in between the outer fender and the inner fender, meaning the outer fender is going to have to come out, the inner fender is going to have to come out. And folks, that's a lot of work. 1, 2, if you ever have to maintain those hoses, if maybe you have a leak or you have to tighten up a hose clamp or anything, that means you have to take off the inner fender and outer fender. I don't want to have to remove a fender to change a heater hose. No way, that's way too much work. So personally, I like the hoses to come straight out the firewall, right in there. And of course, that heater box, there'll be a heater box delete. That'll be a flat panel right there. The hoses will come straight out. So that's for Classic Auto Air. Again, that's another pro for them. That's the style I like. Apparently, I know Vintage Air used to make it like that, and somebody somewhere didn't like it, and they wanted everything hidden. So Vintage Air is gonna, they're gonna tailor it to maybe that group of individuals who like their lines hidden, and maybe they don't tailor to the majority. They just tailor to a certain group, the elite. We'll call them the elite. How about that? The elite mechanics. Well, the common everyday folk, they want, or like myself, I want my lines right here so I could easily access them. So kudos to Classic Auto Air for doing that. All right, this is a line I took out of the box from Classic Auto Air. All right, this line, as you could tell, it come pre-crimped. Pre-crimped. All right, Vintage Air doesn't do that. So you're going to have to pay extra to get them crimped after you install everything. Vintage Air, if you're watching this, you know, that's expensive. You know, to have your customers have to go and find somewhere to get this stuff crimped. That's pricey. So Classic Auto Air, kudos for you on that as well. Another thing, you know, I forgot to mention with the housing for the evaporator and the heater core coils, is in that housing, the heater core and the evaporator in the Classic Auto Air are separated. All right, that means they're not sandwiched together like in the Vintage Air kit. You're going to have the heater core right next to the evaporator coil. I like a separation between the two because when you have heater hoses, and even with a valve on the heater hose, you're still going to have a residual heat coming in from the opposite heater hose. It's going to backflow into the coil. There's always going to be water inside that heater coil, and although it's not going to be as hot as it would with the valve open, there will still be some residual heat. So that's eliminated with the Classic Auto Air because that heater coil is separate. It's not sandwiched like the Vintage Air is. So, all right, so that's basically 5 pros for Classic Auto Air and 1 pro for Vintage Air. All right, let's talk about price for a minute here. So for pricing, the Vintage Air system versus the Classic Auto Air, they're about the same price, folks. You're looking at a little north of $1,500 for the two kits. All right, when everything's said and done, you're going to be in it with shipping and tax a little over $1,600, and then you got to factor in the what it's going to cost to put Freon, and with Vintage Air, what it's going to cost to get your hoses crimped. Either way, you know, you're in it about the same. I say about the same because with the Classic Auto Air, I think it's about $50 or $60 more than the Vintage Air kit. So that's just price. I should have mentioned that from the very beginning. But and so I got another little section I want to talk about is tips and tricks. If you do get the Vintage Air, the first gen Camaro 67 to 69 Vintage Air kit, the new kit, like I said, it comes with the hoses that go way back in there where the fan blower is, in between the two fenders, inner and outer fender. And if you don't want that, if you want the hoses to come straight out the cowl or the firewall, ask Vintage Air for a 55 to 57 Chevy Bel Air evaporator hardline kit. All right, that's a tip right there. If you get that hardline kit, it's going to have a 90-degree turn, and the lines are going to come straight out there, straight out the firewall. I did that for the last Vintage Air kit I put on was a 68 Camaro, and I found those lines on eBay. I just took a chance. I saw them on eBay. They looked to me like they would work. They had the right bend. I tried them out, and sure enough, you know, there was a little fabrication involved. I had to drill out some holes in the plate that Vintage Air provides, but it came out perfect. Again, 55 to 57 Chevy Bel Air evaporator hardline kit will adapt to the first gen evaporator, because the evaporator itself, there's no, you know, big change in the manufacturing of the evaporator. Everything is in how the lines are routed. All right, so that's just a tip if you want to do that. Another tip is, I can't say this about Classic Air because I bought this. Here's my boxes again. I bought this from Jegs. But if you buy your Vintage Air kit from an authorized dealer in the town you live in, if it's a company that installs Vintage Air systems in old classic cars, you could potentially get a discount from them. Because see, they're going to buy more than one kit. You're going to buy one. That company that you go to, that's an authorized dealer, they're going to buy more than one, so they're going to get a discount. They could, in most cases, pass that discount to the consumer, and you could work a deal with them. You know, if you buy the kit from them, And you could ask them, well, will you throw in free crimping? Will you throw in, you know, the free vacuum and charge? And my first vintage air system was in a 72 Chevelle, and a company here in San Antonio that bought exclusively from Vintage Air, they were able to do that. They were able to get it to me for $150 cheaper than if I was to buy it online, and they were able to crimp and charge the system for free. So again, with Classic Auto Air, I went through Jegs. I got it from Jegs, so I can't say the same for them. All right. Last couple things. One, when I'll talk about the old air products. I don't know anything about them. All I can tell you is what I've seen online. They are cheaper. You're going to save a couple $100, maybe up to $300 going with the old air products. I haven't used them yet. I haven't tried them. They don't have a 1967 Camaro kit. They have a 1969. So no 1967, no 1968. So I didn't really want to do any fabricating, or I didn't want to put in a universal kit and have to figure out a way to make it work, which I'm sure I could have, but I just wanted a plug and play 1967 kit, which Vintage Air offers and Classic Auto Air offers. But again, old air products didn't offer it. But again, they are cheaper. All right. Lastly, I'm sure you've heard of the new kid on the block, Restomod Air. Restomod Air. Hey, we got to support the new companies. You know, I'm big about that. I'm big about supporting the new companies. I just hope they're big on constructive criticism. I hope they're open to that, because I have a little constructive criticism. All right. Restomod Air. To me, it seems like they're more focused on bling bling. Right, on air conditioning bling bling. You know, to me, it seems like they're more focused on the, like, take this for example. You know, this is simple. This is simple. All right, I don't need this to be billet. I don't need this to light up. I don't need this to look pretty. You know, I just need air conditioning or heat. Again, that's the common folk. Some people might want gold-plated or a billet, you know, vents. Some people might want their vents to match their rims. Not me. You know, I don't need that. So, and again, and with that, with Restomod Air, you're paying for that. You know, going back to pricing, these are in the $1,500 to $1,600 range. You're north of $2,000 when you get a Restomod Air kit. You are north of $2,000. So anyway, just something to think about. I hope this video helps you make a decision. I hope it again, do your research. You might find something that contradicts something I said, but I have installed Vintage Air. This will be my first Classic Auto Air system, but I do like that the hoses are crimped and everything else that I mentioned. So anyway, this is Road Trek Ralph. I'll give you an update after I finish the air conditioning in this car, but as you can see, I don't want to use those old dingy, oh, you can't even see, but I don't want to use the old dingy controls. I want to use new controls. Alright, y'all have a good day. Road Trek Ralph is signing out.